The rain came down that night like the city itself was weeping, relentless and cold, blurring the edges of everything it touched. Carter Williams stood near the bridge, his jacket already soaked through, his final delivery of the night forgotten the moment he saw her. A woman stood on the wrong side of the railing. She was dressed in something expensive, tailored, sharp, the kind of clothing that didn't belong in places like this. Her fingers gripped the metal tightly, knuckles pale, her face streaked with tears that the rain couldn't hide. She was so still, so close to the edge, that one more step would erase her completely. Carter didn't shout. He didn't run. He walked. Each step was careful, deliberate, his shoes splashing softly in shallow puddles. His heart pounded so loudly it almost drowned out the rain, but his voice, when he spoke, was steady. "Hey, I'm Carter." No response. He swallowed, forcing himself to keep going. "I have a daughter," he said quietly. "She's 7. Her name is Louisa. She's waiting for me to come home." The woman's fingers tightened. "If I leave you here," Carter continued, "I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have helped. And my daughter, she'll grow up knowing her father walked away when someone needed him." Silence stretched between them. Then, barely noticeable, she shifted. It was enough. Carter lunged forward, grabbing her arm as she lost her balance, pulling her back over the railing. They stumbled together onto the wet pavement, and the moment her feet hit solid ground, she collapsed, sobbing in deep, broken gasps. He stayed beside her, saying nothing, just letting her breathe. The police arrived minutes later. Questions followed. Protocols. Concerned glances. She refused the ambulance, gave her name, Alexander Sterling, and showed identification that made the officers suddenly more careful, more formal. Eventually, they left. The bridge fell quiet again. That's when she spoke. "Will you stay with me tonight?" Carter froze, certain he had misunderstood, but she shook her head quickly, her voice trembling. "Not like that. Just stay. If I go home alone, I don't trust myself." He thought of Louisa, of responsibilities, of lines that shouldn't be crossed. But he also saw the truth in her eyes. "I'll call my neighbor," he said slowly, "check on my daughter, and I'll stay on the couch." Relief washed over her face. "Thank you." Her apartment was a different world. Glass walls stretched from floor to ceiling, overlooking a glittering city that felt miles away from Carter's life. Everything inside was pristine. Expensive furniture, polished surfaces, silence that echoed. No pictures, no warmth, just space. Alexander disappeared into her bedroom and returned in simple clothes, stripped of the sharp image she wore outside. She looked human now, fragile. Carter sat awkwardly on the couch, still damp, feeling like he didn't belong in a place like this. She handed him a towel, a glass of water. Then they talked. At first, it was small things, safe things. Louisa's love for dinosaurs, the way she could name species most adults couldn't pronounce. Alexander's childhood, her father's expectations, the scholarships that pushed her forward. Slowly, carefully, they moved deeper. She told him about the company, Sterling Core, about the pressure, the endless work, the isolation that came with power, about the board turning against her, manipulating reports, framing her for a deadly workplace accident. "They're making me the villain," she said quietly, "and I can't prove otherwise." Carter listened, not as a judge, not as a savior, just as someone who understood what it meant to keep going when everything inside you wanted to stop. He told her about his wife, about losing her, about the long, empty days that followed. "Survival isn't strength," he said. "It's stubbornness. It's choosing to take one more breath." They didn't touch. They didn't cross any lines. They simply stayed, together. When morning came, pale light spilling through the windows, Carter stood to leave. His body ached from the couch, exhaustion pulling at him. But there was something else, too, something lighter. He had done something that mattered. At the door, Alexander looked steadier, though still fragile. "Thank you," she said softly. "Call someone," he replied. "Don't do this alone." She nodded. As he turned to go, she added, "You saved my life." Carter met her eyes. "Then live it well." The world outside felt sharper, more real. Carter returned to his routine: pancakes for Louisa, quiet mornings, the hum of a simple life. But the night on the bridge stayed with him. And it wasn't over, because Alexandra didn't disappear. She called. Not long after, Carter found himself sitting across from her in a quiet cafe, a small flash drive between them. I had you investigated, she admitted. I needed to know who you were. He didn't argue. You used to be a data engineer, she continued. I need your help. He hesitated. That life fell far away now. He had responsibilities. A daughter. A fragile piece he couldn't risk. But he remembered the bridge. I'll look at it, he said. That decision changed everything. The data told a terrifying story. Manipulated timestamps. Altered approvals. Deleted audit trails. A carefully constructed lie designed to destroy Alexandra and seize control of her company. Carter worked through the night, instincts returning, skills sharpening with every line of code. By morning, he had the truth. You were set up, he told her, and I can prove it. But truth came at a cost. By evening, photos of them together flooded the media. Headlines twisted their story into scandal. Reporters gathered outside Carter's apartment. His quiet life shattered overnight. Louisa clung to him, frightened. Are we in trouble, Daddy? He held her close. No, we're okay. But for the first time, he wasn't sure. Across the city, Alexandra stared at the headlines. This wasn't just about her anymore. They had dragged Carter into it, used his kindness against him. Something inside her shifted, not into despair this time, but into resolve. She picked up her phone. Set up an emergency board meeting, she told her lawyer. Tomorrow. Then she called Carter. I'm ending this, she said, but I need you to trust me one more time. The Sterling Core boardroom was built to intimidate. A long mahogany table stretched across the center, like a throne of power, surrounded by leather chairs that cost more than most people's yearly income. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, turning everything below into something small, distant, controllable. That morning, the board members arrived confident. They believed this was the end. Richard Voss, the CFO, took his seat with quiet satisfaction. On either side of him sat Linda Marsh and Thomas Burke, the allies who had helped orchestrate Alexander's downfall. They expected a resignation, a clean transition, a victory wrapped in professionalism. They were wrong. Alexandra entered last, and she was not alone. Carter followed her in, wearing a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit, carrying a laptop and a simple folder. He looked out of place, but not uncertain. The room shifted. Confusion flickered across faces, then amusement. Richard leaned back slightly. Miss Sterling, he began smoothly, we appreciate your cooperation in making this transition. I'm not resigning, Alexander said. The words cut cleanly through the room. Silence fell. I'm here to present evidence of corporate fraud, she continued, her voice calm, controlled, and to inform you that criminal complaints are being filed. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Linda straightened. Those are serious accusations. Do you have proof? Alexander didn't answer. She looked at Carter. He stepped forward, opened a laptop, and began. For the next 45 minutes, Carter dismantled everything they had built. He spoke without emotion, without hesitation, just facts. Altered timestamps, forged approvals, deleted audit trails reconstructed from backup systems they thought were erased. Each piece of evidence stacked on the last, forming something undeniable, something inescapable. He showed the original safety reports, the discrepancies, the hidden edits, the chain of manipulation that led directly back to the people sitting in that room. Then came the emails, carefully recovered, damning in their clarity. Plans to remove Alexandra, to control the narrative, to profit from the scandal they created. By the time Carter finished, no one spoke. Thomas Burke looked pale, his confidence gone. Linda stared at the table, her composure cracking. Richard Voss sat very still. Who are you? He asked finally, his voice tight. Carter met his gaze. Someone who knows how to read the truth. Everything moved quickly after that. Security was called. Lawyers flooded in. Richard, Linda, and Thomas were escorted out under the weight of their own actions, their quiet empire collapsing in real time. The same media that had once attacked Alexandra now shifted tone overnight, hungry for redemption stories. Headlines changed, narratives flipped, but Carter stayed out of it. He didn't give interviews, didn't chase recognition. He went home, back to Louisa, back to pancakes in the morning, back to a life that, despite everything, still mattered most. 3 months later, Alexandra stepped down as CEO, not because she lost, because she chose to. She had fought and won, but somewhere along the way, she realized she didn't want that life anymore. Not the endless pressure, not the empty apartment waiting at the end of every day. She sold most of her shares, donated a significant portion to mental health organizations, and began something new: therapy, rest, rebuilding, learning how to live, not just succeed. Carter's life returned to its quiet rhythm, but something had changed. It wasn't as lonely anymore. Alexandra called sometimes. Simple conversations. Checking in. Sometimes she visited. She brought books for Louisa, groceries that somehow appeared in Carter's kitchen without making him uncomfortable. She never crossed boundaries, never forced anything beyond what they had built. Trust, respect, something steady. On Louisa's 8th birthday, Alexandra arrived with a carefully wrapped gift covered in dinosaur paper. Louisa tore it open with excitement. A telescope. It wasn't extravagant. It wasn't overwhelming. It was thoughtful, perfect. That evening, the three of them stood by the window as Louisa adjusted the lens, her voice full of wonder. "I can see the moon." Carter and Alexandra exchanged a quiet look before joining her. Life didn't become perfect. Alexandra still had difficult days, moments when the darkness tried to return. But she wasn't alone anymore. She had built something real, a support system, people who cared, people she trusted. She had learned that asking for help wasn't weakness. It was survival. Carter, too, began to remember who he used to be. Late at night, after Louisa slept, he started studying again, refreshing old skills, rebuilding pieces of himself he thought were gone forever. Not rushing, just moving forward. Months passed. Seasons shifted. Some nights, they took the telescope to the roof of Carter's building. The city stretched around them, loud and alive, while above, the sky remained quiet and endless. They would lie back, side by side, watching the stars, small beneath something vast, but not insignificant, never insignificant. One evening, Alexandra arrived with news. "I've been offered a teaching position," she said, a hint of nervous excitement in her voice. "Business ethics, corporate governance." Louisa grinned. "Are you going to take it?" Alexandra smiled. "I think I should." Carter raised his glass. To new beginnings. They clinked glasses. Juice for Louisa, water for the adults. A simple moment, but meaningful. Later that night, after Louisa had gone to bed, Carter and Alexandra sat in the quiet living room. It felt different from that first night. No desperation, no fear, just calm. "Can I ask you something?" Alexandra said softly. "Of course. That night on the bridge, why did you stop?" Carter thought for a moment. "My wife used to say that who you are is defined by what you do when no one's watching," he said. "No reward, no recognition, just the choice." Alexandra nodded slowly. She must have been incredible. She was. They sat in silence, honoring that truth. Then Alexandra reached out, her hand resting lightly over his. "I'm glad you stopped." Carter looked at her. "So am I?" Outside, the city moved as it always did. Busy, chaotic, indifferent. But inside that small apartment, there was warmth. There was laughter. There was healing. This wasn't a perfect ending. There were still struggles ahead. Uncertainties. Hard days that would come without warning. But there was also something stronger now. Connection. Hope. The quiet understanding that even in the darkest moments, one choice, one act of kindness, could change everything. Carter didn't think of himself as a hero. He was just a father, a man who stopped on a rainy night when someone needed him. But that one moment had rippled outward, saving a life, exposing the truth, building something unexpected and real. And in the end, that was more than enough.